Hello, I'm bekkiflaherty, and this week I'm going to be showing you how to use this trailing floral template to make this pattern here. This template here is one of a set of 6 which you can find in my Etsy store, but if you want to test this concept out first, you can get this template for free from my Pattern Maker's Toolkit and follow along with that one, swapping in the colours and flower shapes we're using today. For accessibility, this video has fully edited subtitles and it also has timestamps set up, so if you're a regular here, feel free to go ahead and skip to the beginning of the tutorial. This is a more advanced level tutorial, so if you've never made a pattern using the diamond method in Procreate before, then I suggest checking out this video first, as it covers everything in much more detail and at a slower pace. I also have lots of beginner friendly pattern tutorials on my channel too, which will help you get better acquainted with the way I make my pattern repeats. This next part is very important. You may be used to dragging and dropping files into Procreate, but if you do it with PSD files, it will flatten all the layers, so be sure to import it the way I'm about to show you. Also, yes, the thumbnails are white and look empty, but I'll explain why in a second. So let's get started. From the gallery screen here, I'm going to open up the template where I have it stored on my iPad. So I'm going to go to Import, to my downloads, and we'll bring in Canvas 1 here. You'll notice there that the thumbnails are all white. That's because I have the sketch layers hidden. Believe it or not, it makes the file size smaller and allows me to upload to Etsy in one single zip file. So don't panic when you initially download the files and all you can see is blank thumbnails. The template layers are all there, they're just turned off here in the sketch layers. So you'll see here it has all the layers and groups which you're familiar with if you've ever made patterns using my tutorials before. These templates don't have any texture overlays on them though. So we're going to start drawing on an empty layer above our sketch diamond here. If I turn off everything else apart from this sketch diamond, you'll see this one here just has an empty diamond on it. So if you don't have this canvas set up and you're using the free template, you're going to need to start by opening up your free template, adding a layer above it, fill the layer with colour, tap to transform, rotate 45 degrees, fit to canvas, then add a layer above and with a contrasting colour just draw in a rough diamond shape following the edges of this one that goes all the way off the edges of the canvas. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be precise, but it does have to go all the way off the edges on all 4 sides. Then you can delete this filled one and you can carry on using this layer in place of the sketch diamond here. I'm going to delete this one because this canvas already has one set up, and we'll turn on the template layers. And we're going to start working in this empty layer above the sketch diamond. So this template has all the stem, leaf and flower positions marked out for you, and all you have to do is trace over them. We're going to draw the ones in black. The ones in blue will be made by eventually duplicating the black ones, and the pink ones will be made in our extra group. This will all become clear as we work through the pattern, but as I said, if you've never made a pattern like this before, then this video here might be a better place to get started. So because I have all the stems in place with the template, I'm not going to bother re-sketching those. I'm just going to add in my own versions of the flowers and leaves where the spots are marked out for them. I always like to start on an empty layer so I can move things around before I merge it down with the diamond. So I'm going to start by stamping out some flowers on the draw here first layer, just in these black circles, not the blue ones, just the black ones. And I'm going to use a stamp from this floral set here, which comes with these canvases, the ones from my Etsy store. And while I make these, I'm also going to be using this palette here, which also comes with these. So I'm going to use this one here, and I'll just grab a pink colour to do this, and I'm just going to stamp it into all of the black circles like this. Once you have all of the flowers stamped into the black circles, you can then pinch to merge this down with your sketch diamond. Then we're going to duplicate this layer, tap to transform, and this is where I said we'll use these black ones to eventually build out where the blue ones are going to be. So we're going to turn snapping and magnetics on, and I've got both of those turned all of the way up, and we'll drag it down and across and snap it down into this corner here, and you'll see those orange lines intersecting there. You'll see now that these blue circles down here are filled with the repeats of these from up there. So we're going to repeat that into all of these corners. So this bottom layer again, we're going to duplicate, drag it up and snap it up there, duplicate it again and snap it into this corner, always looking for the orange lines there, and then down and again into this one. Then those top 4 layers, we can pinch those together, tap, and then we can invert this layer, and then we can see these green ones are the ones we've made by duplicating, and the pink ones are the only ones which we would have to draw. So for this pattern, I'm going to mostly stick to just tracing over the leaf shapes as well, so I'm not going to bother to do those in the sketch layer. I'll just draw those as I go when I'm working on the pattern. So this is our sketch done now. We've got all of the elements laid out, and then in our pattern group we can now turn that one on. I'll collapse that one up there, and I'll just bring down the opacity on that. So when we're working with a diamond repeat, instead of this being our pattern tile, we think of this diamond here as our pattern tile. And what makes this a trailing floral is that somewhere on this pattern there will be a line of floral stem that crosses over both lines of the pattern and allows it to endlessly swirl. So in this one, it's marked out with the green. So we've got this line here, which starts here, goes up there, and then crosses over there. And then this line here, which also crosses there and up there. The green ones are the ones we need to draw in first. So above this pattern marker layer, and I'll just grab a dark blue for this, and I'm going to use the tracing crayon from my pattern maker brush set. I'm going to trace in this line here, starting up here and then finishing just up here. So this is the first line you'll put in with this template. I'm going to go into the tracing crayon, and on the stabilization I'm going to turn that up a little bit more so we can get a bit more of a smoother line. So following the line as closely as you can. Take that up there. Actually, I think I have a steadier hand drawing this way, so I'm going to try drawing it this way instead. There we go, that feels better. So obviously I can't move my iPad around because it's fixed for filming, but when you're doing this you can move your iPad around and rotate the canvas as you need to get that smooth line going there. So this line here is the one that's going to join up with down there. So to make sure that these join up, we're going to repeat this down there. So this line here will be coming off down there. So we put a mark going off each of the corners of the canvas there, making sure that it has gone all the way off the edges. We don't want a line that kind of goes like that because then it won't grab the whole canvas. So then we can duplicate this layer, tap to transform, and just like we did with the sketch layers, we're going to drag this down here and snap it into place in this corner, making sure that we get those orange lines there. So now we can draw this line in and join it up with there, making sure that we're on this first layer again. So we can just continue on from here. Bring this up. Should have zoomed out a bit, but that's okay. And merge that one in with that line there. So that is the two trailing lines of this canvas now put in. So we can delete this duplicated one there, and then what we need to do now is carry on tracing over all of the stems that are dotted in black. And then once you have all of the black stems drawn in, not these pink ones, we'll draw those later in the extra section, I'm going to add a layer underneath and draw in some leaves. For these I'm just going to follow the shape that's marked out there with the dotted line. So now all of our leaves are outlined, we can fill those in using colour drop. And then to get rid of this line here, we're going to duplicate this layer, tap on adjustments, go to Gaussian blur and put a Gaussian blur of just 3% on there. Then we can hide this layer, tap to select, and we're going to use automatic selection and tap in any of the area that you haven't drawn in. And then you want to adjust your threshold so that it comes somewhere in between the edge of your shape and the line that we want to fill in. If you go too far, you're going to get kind of splurges like that. So try and have it so it just goes inside the edge and you've still got that line showing there. Then we're going to invert the selection add a new layer and tap and fill this with the same colour, and that is going to fill in a smaller shape than the leaves on top. If I hide the leaves layer there, you can see we've got like a smaller area filled that just goes out past that gap, and that fills it all in one go for us. Before we merge it down, I'm just going to check, because I had somewhere here where there was two leaves that were quite close together here, and on the layer that we've just filled, I'm going to grab my eraser, and with a small eraser I'm just going to go in between here and just put that divide back in there. So if you had any shapes that were close together and you've got kind of some merging there, you can just have a quick scan around and erase any parts like that. Then making sure this layer is hidden in the middle or deleted, that's the blurred one. Either make sure it's hidden or you can delete it, and then we can merge these together. And now we've got one solid layer of filled leaf shapes without that gap running down them. The next thing I'm going to do is the middles on the flowers. So we'll add that on the layer above the stems. And I'll use this orange colour for now, but we're going to add some colour on top later. But we'll start out with this orange colour, and I'm just going to draw in these circle shapes here. If you want it to be a perfect circle, you can draw, hold, tap, and then release, and you'll get a perfect circle, or you could just leave them kind of wiggly wobbly as they are. So now I'm going to go around and do this for any of the flowers we've drawn inside the black circles. I know I've made this a bit confusing by making them pink. So this one here, even though it's kind of part of the pink extra group, the flower circle itself is black, so we will draw this one in for this layer. So anything inside a black circle, we're going to draw it in. And then we're going to colour drop fill those, the same as we did before, and also repeat the fill for those. I'm going to change the background colour to a light pink now, and then underneath these orange ones I'm going to add a layer and draw the petals in white. And then same as before, we're going to colour drop fill those, and then fill the gaps using Gaussian blur, and then zoom in around the edges of the petals to make sure we haven't got any merged bits. We can then erase those before we merge the layers together. Now I'm going to add a bit of stylization to the leaves. So I'm going to add a layer above the leaves, make it a clipping mask, and using this dark colour that we use to draw the stems, and I'm going to use the colouring crayon, and what I'm going to do is just colour in 1/2 of each leaf, stick into that line there. And it doesn't always have to be the same side, you can do it on whichever side of the leaf you want it to mix things up a bit. So I'm just going to go around and add that darker colour to 1/2 of all these leaves. And then once I've done 1/2 of all the leaves like this, on the same layer, I'm going to add some leaf veins coming out of the other side. So then to do the next part of the stylizing, I'm going to add a mask to this layer. So the dark blue layer we've clipped over the top. And then with a black pen on this mask layer, I'm going to then go and kind of basically erase out some lines over this side as well. When you're doing this, you need to be careful that you don't go across the leaf veins that you've drawn on the other side. I'm sure I'll find some that I've missed there, but we'll call that done for now. I'm going to move the sketch folder up on top of my pattern folder now so I can see the line work for the flowers. So this one here that's got the pink flowers on it, I'm going to change the blend mode on that to linear burn and turn the opacity down so I can see where to draw these dots and bits and pieces on there. So now on a layer above these orange ones, I think these dots around there, I'll make those white, and I'll use this mini dot brush to do those. And then I'm also going to put this inner circle in white as well. So I will now switch to my line detail brush and make sure this is nice and thin. And then I'm just going to trace over the circle, hold, tap, and then let go. And do that for all of these as well. And then the next thing to add is these lines here on the petals. So we'll go to the petals layer, add a layer above. We could make it a clipping mask, but this isn't going to go past the edges of the petals, so we don't need to clip it. And then in a contrasting colour, I'm just going to use green because it's a dark visible colour at the moment, but I am actually going to come and change some of the colours around in a minute. So we'll just add these in green for now. Now I'm going to turn the sketch layers off for a while we do some colour work. So what I want to do is have each one of these flower centres and then the line work around it be a slightly different colour. So I'm going to add a layer right at the top here to start with, and I'm just going to colour a shape that's bigger than the flower and then clip it down to the different layers. If you want to retain maximum editability on your pattern, I would do each of these colours on a separate layer, but I'm going to cheat a bit and do them all on the same layer. They're not going to be touching each other, so it is going to be easy enough to alpha lock the layer and recolour them if we wanted to. So I'll just use the colouring crayon to do this. Nice and big, and I'm just going to draw a big blob over the different flowers like this. It's going to look a bit messy and weird to start with, but once we clip it down it will start to make sense. This one I want to keep orange. I'll do this one too. Okay, so now we've made a mess of this, let's clean it up. So I want to clip this down over the orange layer. So we'll move it there and clip it down. And then I also want to clip it over the green flower lines we did. So we'll duplicate that layer, drag it underneath, and clip it to that layer too. And now we've got all these different coloured flowers there. And as I said, if you wanted to recolour this, it's easy enough to alpha lock this layer and just recolour it like that if you wanted to. So let's turn the sketch layer back on. That is now all of the illustrating done in our pattern group. The next thing we need to do is to draw these bits on the side, and we're going to do that in the extra group. So let's go up and turn this one on. Well, before we turn that on actually, let's swipe down with 3 fingers to copy all. Then we'll turn our extra group on. Tap on this layer here, swipe down again, and tap paste. And now let's put a flattened copy of everything we had. And what we want to do is bring these into the middle so that we can work on them as a whole piece without having them cut in half on the edges. So we do that by duplicating this layer, tap to transform, snap this to the edge there, you'll get orange lines up there, and then the one underneath we snap this to the other edge. And now you can see we've got this intact and in the middle. When we come to build the pattern out later, we'll do the reverse of what we just did, split this in half and put it back on the edges. So let's pinch those two together for now, and then all we need to do is just repeat all of this illustration we've done for these parts here. So I will show you how to get this initial stem in place, and then we'll just fast forward through the rest. So just find the crayon we had, tracing crayon, and we'll just draw this one, and then we're going to merge it in with where it joins this line here. And then when we put this back in place in the main pattern, that's going to merge perfectly in just like it does here. So now we can carry on with doing the rest of the pattern. So now all of our illustration is done and we're ready to build out the pattern tile. So I'm going to start by turning off my sketch group, I'm going to turn off my pattern, and I'm going to turn off the background. Then in this extra group here, I'm going to turn off the extra part and the inserted image. So now we just have this extra part that we drew on view. I'm going to swipe down with 3 fingers, tap copy all, and up on my top level here, swipe down again and tap paste. So now we've got a flattened copy of that which we can chop up and move to the edges, and we've still got this one intact with all the different layers there. So let's turn off both of those. Now we'll turn on our pattern, come into here and hide the pattern marker, swipe down here with 3 fingers, copy all, then up here on the top again we can tap paste. Now we can turn the pattern layers off, turn the background colour on, and if we just hide this one for now, let's put this back on the edges. So we're going to put a mark going right off the top and bottom corners here. So now we can grab the whole canvas, we'll duplicate it first, tap to transform, and we're going to snap it over here to this edge, doing the opposite of what we did when we put the extra background in. Then this one we can snap over to here. Be super careful that you've got your orange lines there. Then you can pinch those two together and we'll erase these parts up here. So now that is back in place where it should be in the pattern. If we turn our sketch on, you can see that fits perfectly over those parts we sketched there. Then we can turn our pasted in pattern group on, and when you have these two here and you're combining them, before you flatten them, make sure that any flower stalks like this, make sure they're under the bits they're meant to be under and not on top. So this extra part needs to be underneath before you pinch to merge these two together. So now we can build out our pattern tile in the same way that we did with the sketch, putting it down into the corners. So I'm going to duplicate this, tap to transform, drag it up and over to the side, and then put this one down here. Making patterns like this in Procreate is how I make all my patterns these days for both personal and professional projects. This part though, duplicating this around the canvas and building the tile out, I normally do this in Photoshop. I've got an automation set up to convert the pattern folder into a smart object and then to automatically duplicate it around the canvas just like I did here. It's so quick and easy, and you can do it just by pressing one button. Using smart objects means you don't have to flatten a thing, and you could edit a part of the pattern. For example, you could edit this flower up here and it would update for the repeat of it down there and any others around the canvas. In terms of quality, it's absolutely fine to do this part here in Procreate, but if you want max speed and editability in your workflow, then Photoshop smart objects are the way to go. So one last thing to do here, which is erase these marks in the corner and the ones on the edge. So I'm going to put the duplicated ones up there, pinch those two together, and then we can erase those in the middle. And then this one here, we just need to erase those off the corners. Then we can, last of all, just pinch those together there. And there we go, that is now a finished pattern tile. Using this diamond repeat will mean you get no gaps when you upload to Spoonflower, but before we save and export, it's always good to do a quick test right here in Procreate. So I'm gonna swipe down with 3 fingers to copy all, swipe down again and paste. So now I've got a flattened version of everything at the top. Underneath, I'm gonna add a layer of black. Then I'm going to tap to transform this layer, and we're going to snap this up here 1800 pixels, and you'll see those orange lines there. Then we can duplicate that and drag it over here, and before we pinch those two together, we can just zoom in here and check the seam there to make sure that there's no black line showing there, and also that everything is lined up properly, which it is. So then we can pinch those together, duplicate those, and drag those and snap them to the bottom, and then we can test the horizontal seam here as well. And that's looking okay. So now we can pinch those two together, and that is our pattern in repeat. You can find this template plus 5 others over in my Etsy store, as well as the original Pattern Maker Canvas brush set, which has all the drawing brushes I've used today. If you're a Pattern Maker's Toolkit member, then you'll get 10% off everything in my Etsy store. Pattern Maker's Toolkit is kind of like a Patreon group, except it's free. You'll get access to all the resources in the Pattern Maker's Toolkit on my website, including those I make for my Skillshare classes, early access to some of my YouTube tutorials and drawing prompts, discounts in my Etsy store, and one new freebie exclusively via email every month. If you want to learn more about my Procreate to Photoshop workflow using automations and smart objects, you can find that over on Skillshare. If you're new to Skillshare and you sign up with the link below, you'll get an extra 30 days for free. All the links for everything are in the description. Don't forget to tag me at bekkiflaherty if you share your patterns on Cara so I can see them. And don't forget to subscribe here if you want to see more pattern tutorials like this every week. That's all from me today. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you soon.